Hi everyone, I'm going to tell you my favorite money-saving garden hacks. Of course, making your own compost is up there, and some people even make their own insecticidal soap spray with, say, Dawn detergent. Those are all great, but these are what I use, and besides compost, making my own compost, and what I think you would like as well. So first one I'm going to start with is, these nursery flats. If you go to the nursery a lot like I do, and you get these flats, yes, you could return them to the nursery. Most of the time they do appreciate that. But if you don't get around to that, or you want to keep some for yourself, these I find make excellent bird control, even rabbit control, and pest control for your seedlings. So if you direct sow your seedlings, sometimes it looks like they don't even come up. Probably what's happening is birds are pulling them out, well, besides snails and slugs, so make sure you bait because that's not going to help with this. But what I do is I just turn them over like this, lay them next to each other, and the seedlings get a little bit of shade and the birds can't usually get through and get them. I like it much better than bird netting, which I usually end up wrapping myself in, wrapping the weed eater in, and usually it's almost like a one-time use because by the time I'm done with it, it's just this big mess. And anyways, use those for pest control. Just pin them down so the wind doesn't blow them away. Something else is, I don't fertilize. I just add compost and I amend my soils. Every once in a while, I might fertilize just if I'm bored, but for the most part, I add everything to the soil for my vegetable garden that I need ahead of time and my flower garden. And one thing I do use besides compost and a little bit of chicken manure is alfalfa meal. Alfalfa meal is a mild nitrogen fertilizer. So you could go to the nursery aisle and you could find them marketed, but you could go to the feed store and buy a 50-pound bag for just maybe slightly more than a small box at the nursery. Make sure it doesn't have molasses. I don't think molasses is gonna hurt, but one, you don't need the added cost of it. And two, you don't really want the molasses because it may attract insects. So these are pellets that you could just sort of mix up in water and make it and then sprinkle it around. Or I've gotten more lazy. I just put them on top, turn them under a few inches, and then the rain dissolves them pretty quick. So buy at the feed store. And if you are someone who likes to add magnesium sulfate, remember that is just a standard nutrient that plants need. More isn't necessarily better, but if you have a magnesium deficiency, you have some chlorosis going on and some curled leaves, instead of getting the magnesium at the nursery aisle, you could get Epsom salts because that is magnesium sulfate and it's usually cheaper. All right, so ants. If you have ants, you've heard me mention that if you have ants, chances are you might have a pest like mealybugs, aphids, whiteflies, things like that. So if you control the ants that are protecting those pests, you're going to allow the natural predators to come in and take care of the pests. Or you may just have ants in your house. Sometimes they're just going after various things in your house. So if you buy a lot of the taro ant baits or ant baits, try making your own. My mother-in-law gave me this recipe. Take borax, so it's 4 teaspoons of borax, 1 cup of sugar, 3 cups of water, bring it to a quick boil, let it cool, and then you could just dip cotton balls or put a little bit into bottle caps and place around the ants' trail. They're attracted to the sugar, but they take the borax away. And so you can make a big vat of it. Of course, just label it when you put it in the fridge so people don't think it's like soup or something. Okay, so I'm sure you've all gotten sheets before and they come in this plastic container with a zipper and you're like, wow, this is too cute to throw away. Well, don't throw it away. Or you've bought butter lettuce and it has this nice little container. Well, you could turn that into a mini greenhouse to start your cuttings. So cuttings are the #1 way of saving money, in my opinion. So I'm just going to mention that. I actually have a YouTube video on cuttings, so you could take a look at that to figure out exactly how you could do cuttings. But take one of these little containers and put your cuttings in it. They're not going to be tall cuttings, but mist it, fill it with water, and then you have a little mini greenhouse. So why not reuse it? All right, seed starting. It's pretty cheap to grow plants from seeds because you get a lot of plants that way, but don't buy the nursery pots and necessarily because they are more expensive. Go to the dollar store and you could buy paper cups, even little Dixie cups, even red Solo cups. These are a little more environmentally friendly. Just make sure you drill a hole in the bottom. Usually take a whole stack and just drill with a big drill bit right through. And by the time the plants are growing and ready to be put in the ground, the paper cups are sort of dissolving, so you don't even need to take them out of the cups necessarily, but way cheap way of getting your seeds started. Plant labels. You always want to label your plants, right? Plant labels can be expensive for what they really are, which is just sticks of plastic. Mini blinds. Take old mini blinds and cut them into strips, almost the same exact plastic, and make sure you use pencil or a non-smearing pen. But you could get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds out of one window treatment. So mini blinds as a plant labels. All right, next is if you want to do some vertical gardening, say for herbs or some strawberries or even annual flowers, then try growing them in a shoe organizer. Don't use a plastic one because that plastic's not meant to be outside in the sun. It'll break down. Plus, if you're doing edibles, that plastic isn't probably food grade plastic, but a cloth shoe organizer works great. You just fill each pocket with soil and you could hang it. Now it is cloth, so it's going to dry out faster than, say, a plastic pot. So you could either line the inside with sphagnum moss, or what I recommend is putting it maybe in some afternoon shade so it doesn't get that brutal afternoon heat. That'll cause it to dry out faster. But really, they're pretty darn cheap. You could find them. And, you know, the plants, if you have snails and slugs, if you have it grown in this, the snails and slugs aren't going to get there. So those are just some of my favorite money-saving garden hacks. You may have this at home already, so it's even easier. You don't even need to go out and purchase it. But thanks for watching.